am Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the movie The Last Front. I am joined today by writer and director Julien Hayet-Kerknawi, along with cast members Iain Glen, Sasha Luss, and James Downie. And Julien, starting with you, I wanted to look at the way in which you're telling this story, which isn't a community that's in the crux of war, but actually really interestingly is what do those last few days or last few weeks look like for a family and the community around them? And I was interested in how you found that as the entry point in the way that you wanted to tell the story.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to portray the film through an emotional and visual journey through World War One, focusing on the personal impact of the conflict instead of the more broader based plot heavy. Yeah, my goal was to depict a war as an aberration against nature and humanity, avoiding the traditional good versus evil narratives. Um,
It's really wonderful. And Iain, in coming over to you and talking about your character, when we meet him at the very beginning of the film, he's so stuck in the loss of his wife and a place where he feels like that grief is just following him around as constant as a shadow. I think the lines say something along that. And I was curious for you how that really shaped a lot of your character, not even just at the beginning, but throughout the film and how he deals with all of the obstacles ahead of him.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it's very sweetly, subtly portrayed at the beginning of the film, this kind of this backstory and the loss of his wife. But what you are introduced to is a kind of just a normality, this rural life, Belgium, early, early 20th century. And it's kind of, he's like an everyman, really, and he's a single parent trying to deal with his errant son and his daughter. And it's the kind of thing I struggle with on a daily freaking basis with my kids who are, just out there. So there's a kind of sweet normality to it. And I think what that does is enhance just how brutal and thoughtless war is when it arrives. And these are people like, you or I who are, they have no idea that this is coming around the corner. They're total innocents, they're very much involved in their daily lives. And he's, as I say, a farmer. Um, and I don't think he's sort of plagued by his the loss of his wife, but it's just present, and it's a kind of it's a little gentle leitmotif that kind of plays within the piece, and leads him through at critical times. But what Julian is saying, and I think which is really true, and what I loved about the script. There's lots of ways you can try and go about trying to tell a film about the First World War, but to try and personalize and just really, really talk about the people who got caught up in it, who had no idea that it was coming, has the great advantage of sort of unshackling you from all the stuff that you need, the grandeur that you need sometimes to make a great war film that kind of, covers the why did it happen, what were the politicians thinking, why was the territory that they were trying to gain, and what caused the war to happen, how could it have been avoided, how could it be, and just center on a small village and the people within it, because that's what's happening in Ukraine right now. That's what's happening. They had no idea this was coming around the corner. And I don't think they really care what Putin is thinking or why he wants to do what he's doing. I don't think it's important to them at all. All they know is that they had somebody who they loved and they've gone, or they could walk down the street and now they can't. And they used to live in this place and they have to go. And so I think it's very tender. It's a very emotional the film, which centers on these people, and but is full of humanity and is full of sort of hope and survival. And I'm always amazed. I think it when I read the news, but I feel it when I watch this film, of people's ability to adapt and survive and find the best of a situation. And so there's a sweetness to the film which I think is very winning too.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me over to you, Sasha, in terms of your character and the growth that we see her go on through the film, because I actually really like that she feels like someone who has a very strong sense of who she is in the world at the beginning and is very steadfast in a lot of her convictions. And yet she still has space to grow and learn new things about herself. And so I was curious in how you found that journey and that arc for her along the way.
No, I think in the beginning of the story, she has an idea of what she wants to do, but I don't think she really realizes that what her life would be if she stayed with Adrian, you know, like I think she's still naive and kind of what's the word? Um she doesn't understand it, you know, like she can picture it from her perspective. It's gonna be really, you know, us holding hands under the tree with a baby. She doesn't understand what it is to be a farmer, you know. But then what happens, and she has no choice. And as Ian mentioned, you know, we play people that do not understand this, that there is somewhere, there's a government and they're doing these things. We're dealing with this right here, right now. You have to deal with the fact that someone you loved so deeply is gone, that you have to leave your town, your life, everything, you know, your hopes in a way. Because all of us have, you know, ideas of how we want to, you know, our future to be, and we plan it, you know, and tomorrow is going to happen this. And I think that's what's taken away from her. Like her entire life is taken away from her. And the fact that she found the strength to go and you know, and I think that's something that is so important about this film, that it talks that you can choose your family. If you choose to love someone, if you choose to protect them and be there for them, that's your family. And it happened like Louise Leonard becomes her family. And the beginning of their relationship, you know, they're not so good. Like Leonard doesn't really like me, Louise, but they they stick to each other and they decide to protect and love each other and be there for each other. And I think that kind of also that teaches Louise, like she understands that, oh, that's what life is about. That's what love actually is, you know, like, and the fact that she decides to go on for her child, you know, that, and she's like, I'm going to be strong and I'm going to go through this. And in the last moment in the film, you kind of see her, and we discussed it with Julian, that we really wanted her to change. We wanted to see this visible change in her, like not even appearance in terms of like her dress is dirty or something, but in her eyes, that you see that this girl, she'll have a good future, she'll survive, she'll make it. And that arc was exceptional. That's why I loved, you know, like the script. I mean, selfishly, I loved I loved the role of Louise in the story, of course, but that what really attracted me to her.
It's so wonderful. And James, I wanted to ask about in terms of playing Adrian, just because you know, he's a young man kind of grappling with the idea of I'm fairly certain I'm going to be called up for the war soon, and there's a very strong possibility that I'm going to lose my life. And I was curious for you in playing him, how that influenced a lot of his choices and actions and responses to things, just knowing that that's constantly at the back of his mind and something that he's been thinking about.
Yeah, yes and no, really. I mean, I think, you know, as Ian said, like there's whispers and there's rumors, but no one has any idea what is coming around the corner, you know. And I feel like, you know, when you're deeply, madly in love with someone, that takes over everything. And he's so deeply immersed in his conundrum within the parameters of his world, which is the farm and the town. And little does he know, there's this external force, this asteroid slowly making its way into his orbit, and when it ultimately crashes down, all these worries, these problems, you know, his relationship with Louise, you know, they've got a baby on the way outside of wedlock, and you know, gaining approval and validation and respect from his father after the death of his mother. These are all problems that he's so deeply immersed in. So I don't think he's thinking too much about what's coming his way. And so when it does, it's such a shock, and yeah, it just blows everything out of proportion, you know. Yeah.
And Julian, in the way that you've written and directed this film, it's very much, we have Ian's character Leonard as the nucleus and the center of the story, but we see the impact that he has on everyone around him. And, you know, when something happens to him, the way that his family respond to things, and also the huge impact that he has on his community, and kind of really being able to step up and try to lead them into safety. And so when you were creating this story, how did you always look at his character at the center, but then the impact that would have on all of the rest of the characters in the story?
Well, I kind of I always find it very interesting how when the actors talk about how their experience was and what they saw in the film, how it's to me, it's, you know, as the director, it's, I see it in a total, I see it in a more visual, from a more visual and cinematic perspective. I took great care into trying to first get to know the character of Leonard and his son and Louise through the setting we see them in, and the way they handle things, and how the editing kind of helps us to get to know them, each other, without having the first line of dialogue being spoken. And what I enjoyed, one of the most proudest, one of the things that I'm the most proud of in this movie is that the first 15 minutes is such a very calm and quiet, kind of almost like of an introspective piece of a father and a son, arguing about how family could look like, and how and having Louise caught in the middle of that. And when we get there, the full when we're out of the family world, then we start entering into the real world, you know, the world of the whole war. And there's a little transition in the film. I don't know if you noticed, but because it's so small, but the movie suddenly fades to black for like half a second, and then suddenly the movie opens again, and we're in the middle of this camp. And for Leonard's character, for the character of Leonard, and also all of the characters, what I really love the most is that this war movie, has zero historical real figures, and it's mostly focused on how the most irrelevant, if you would like look at if you would take like a medieval painting, you know, you would see a big historical figure, like, you know, like a big fighter or something, and you would see a little peasant in the background, painted in the background. You know, there's no historical records of that little peasant. It's only like the big character. And to follow characters for like 90 minutes that would have been forgotten in the records of history, and to see them grow as the heroes of their own journey, you know, like the monomyth, where a hero is something we see in 1,000 different faces and 1,000 different variations of that story. I think they did an incredible job in it.
I love that description. And Ian, in this film, all of the characters go through losing people in front of them. And I wanted to ask you in particular about your performance when that happens to him, because we kind of see that flicker of that moment where he just kind of almost emotionally shuts down for a second, but then also realizes that he has to do certain things and take certain actions following that. And I was curious how you went into that scene and that sequence of events that follows for him afterwards.
It's not fun. I don't enjoy it at all. It's like a horrible thing you have to sort of put yourself through, and without being kind of pretentious about it, you know, I can feel myself emotionally and psychologically. You just get confuse yourself for you know, the course of the shooting of such a scene. What's funny about it is that it's not something you can massively prepare for. You know, the scene begins in a normal way, and I'm witnessing my son engaging with this doctor's daughter, and it's the wrong time. It's just the wrong time for this to be happening. It's not you know, warnings have been given, and we're in a very domestic and a very normal scene, and as I say, similar to, you know, a scene I'll probably play later today with my own daughter, who's 16. You know, and then the world totally, you know, perverts and changes, and you just need to be in a state where you witness and you know, you just let that happen to you. But it is kind of a bit like putting yourself through trauma. You kind of just have to, for the 10 hours of the shooting, you have to get yourself into a sort of state that where you're receptive, and you have to repeat it and you have to repeat it. And it's just confusing, and I don't enjoy it at all. In fact, I hate it. And I know how much I hate it before I do it. And then there's a kind of sense afterwards that you think, okay, that's done. It's over. But there's no great sense of, oh, yeah, I'm really, you know, I found those tears. I feel great. You know, I'm emotionally, I just felt I really nailed. I just think, thank God that's done. I'm done. I've done that bit. And you know, the only thing I felt, and I spoke to Julien about this, and we were kind of, it was a funny thing. There was a practical side to it, but there was also an other side to it, is that I felt in my understanding of it, and this is instinctive, it's not something I've been through, but you know, I don't know where you pick these things up, but that there should be a delay, that there should be a hold. I didn't want to kind of release in the moment. I mean, it's almost impossible to think what it is you're witnessing, or you think you're witnessing. There's a twist and there's a surprise, but what you think you're witnessing. But I didn't want, there was in the script initially, there was a moment that was very soon after it that everything kind of got released. And I thought, I don't think, because I don't think it computes that way. I don't think emotion quite can work that way at that level. You kind of hold it, and you kind of, you don't know, you can't even own up to yourself. You can't sort of, and so, and the process of sort of realization, which is about trying to explain what it is that happened to others, that begins that process. And so there was a delay, and so that thing happens later on. And Julien, to his credit, was very, very open, and as he was throughout the filming, about how each scene might be made manifest, how we'd go about doing it. But yeah, can't remember what your question was, but that was roughly.
No, it's such a great description in terms of the way that your brain kind of can't compute it when it happens, but it's later. And so, Sasha, I wanted to ask if that was a similar experience for you, because I almost feel like we see your character just have to hold herself in and not even make a sound. But then if we look at some of the moments later in the film for you, there's that instance where she can barely physically hold herself up just because of the emotional and physical toll that everything's taking.
But I think it's also, you know, like, I agree with what Iain said, but I think for Louise, she had been protected by her parents. You know, I don't think there's anything in her life that happened that she was kind of like, she dealt with some sort of adversity. And for her, that just because she's so young, you know, like she's this like delicate thing. Just seeing Adrian getting shot, I'm like, I remember when we were filming it, and she has Virgil there who's like, don't make a sound, because he understands how dangerous it is, and she's holding it together. But then the moment when she runs and she sees that he's actually is gone, her life is just like everything, like her life is gone, like there's nothing left for her. But then it goes on, like, and she discovers that her family, like everyone she loves, it's for her, it's just tears, and trying to kind of comprehend with it, like what happens. But because, you know, because of who she is, I think she lets go of it, like kind of like she can cry, she can allow herself to do this, while I feel like Leonard wouldn't, you know, and that's why Iain made this choice. But for Louise, it's actually the moment when she decides that, no, I'm not gonna cry anymore. Like I'm done. Like I have to be strong. I have to go forward with this, you know, like with being strong and being brave for my child, for people that I also have to protect, you know, because she has Joanna, you know, who becomes her little sister at that moment. So she actually chooses to be strong. I don't think she's as strong in the beginning. She is, but it's all covered with layers of, you know, fancy little dresses and, you know, family protection. But that moment, allows her like to really get in her power and be like, no, it's a decision. And I feel like it's actually important because there are a lot of stories that are told that, you know, we have people like superheroes because they were born with superpowers, you know, like, or they have something there. But this story is about people choosing to be strong, choosing to be brave, choosing to go on, choosing to have hope. And I think that's what makes this story so, so special.
It's a wonderful point, and I really appreciate all of you talking about the film. So congratulations on the movie, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
your
you for
support.
having us.